This is the Daily Technology Pulse podcast from Daily Computers, the preferred technology provider for public and private sector organizations throughout Maryland and Virginia. This episode is brought to you by HP Wolf Security, delivering unique endpoint security and protection to your organization and devices no matter where, when, or how you work. And now here's your host, Rick from Daily.
Joining us today on the Technology Pulse podcast, we are very excited to have James Dobra. James is the Director of Security Solutions at HP Wolf Security. James, welcome to the Technology Pulse.
Thank you very much, Rick. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and the audience.
And we are excited to have you because let me tell you, it's one of those topics that really perks up people's ears, and we're certainly thankful for that because there's no winning security. We already know that. There's no end game. It's one of those things how do they say it in the betting world? A push is a win. And for those of you who aren't bettors and don't know what I'm talking about, that it just means you tied. You didn't lose. So it's all about avoiding those losses. But before we get into that, I always like to give our listeners just a little bit of information about you. So why don't you tell us, how long you've been with HP and what prompted you to join the HP family?
I've been with HP for 4 years now, and I joined HP through an acquisition. HP had invested in the cybersecurity startup called Bromium, and some people may know Bromium as a startup. Cybersecurity startup that had been working a lot with federal customers for the previous 10, 12 years. And HP had started to have a partnership with them and eventually said, we've got to have them. And bought out and made the acquisition of the startup. So I joined through Bromium, and really that's where I started to get a lot of my security chops there in a previous startup. But joining HP, I got to be honest, I'd been pretty excited about working in startups, cybersecurity startups, and then joining HP, this big behemoth corporation, I wasn't super excited about that. And especially since I hadn't heard much about them in terms of security. I was pleasantly surprised how much HP had been investing in security for years and maybe just hadn't been doing a good job of talking about it and really explaining how their investments had been doing. So while I feel like the startup had been acquired by HP, the interesting thing is that HP did a bit of a reverse acquisition in that once we joined, they've taken their other security investments and then put them underneath our enterprise security division. So HP has really been doubling down and kind of concentrating on security, adding to the PC endpoint, the Windows PCs, and also the printers, and trying to develop that or build on that critical mass of investment in security, as opposed to having it kind of spread throughout the corporation. They've got it all concentrated now in this one group. So it's been kind of exciting to be part of this big organization with the sort of resources they have to make the investments that really make a difference.
And that's great. And Daly has been very excited to have the partnership with HP. We've been longtime partners with HP, and everything from client computing to printing, and now security is definitely something that we're really thrilled to be offering to our customer base throughout Maryland and Virginia. So now I have to ask the question, because you said, HP has been making all of these moves in security and making all of these investments. And I think we've seen that really come to fruition with, the product that I like to look at as having one of the coolest logos I have ever seen from a corporate standpoint. But that's HP Wolf Security. Can you tell us a little bit about what HP Wolf Security really is? Because I'm sure there are people who've heard it. I'm sure they've seen it on their PC when they've booted it up, but they're not really sure just what it is, what it does, and how it really works for them.
Yeah. The HP Wolf Security, that logo that you see, is really from HP marketing, and it's a way to indicate all of the different sorts of investments that HP has made and included in that device, as well as indicate that there's a lot of others that are available. So primarily that splash screen talks about a specific feature. called Sure Start. The HP Wolf security as a logo is really a brand platform. It's both everything and nothing in terms of products because it is all of the different security investments as opposed to a single product. So we're talking about all the different things that HP has invested in on the Windows platforms and also the printer platform. Because if you think about it, what is a printer nowadays? It's a computer that's on your network. It just doesn't have a standard keyboard and monitor, but it's still a full-fledged computer, and attackers know that it's on your network. So we at HP have strived to have some of the most secure printers as well as PCs on the planet. And so that HP Wolf security logo represents the entire investment and focus on security. It's not an individual product. There are products, specifically there's one called HP Wolf Pro Security. Just by adding the word pro, it turns into a product. So Wolf Pro Security is a product that's available bundled on the PCs as well as standalone software. So that logo, it's the brand platform talking about all the different security features and products that are available from HP.
And so when you're talking about HP Wolf Pro Security, you said that's a product. What does HP Wolf Pro Security do? Is it an advanced level security, or is it an always on type of thing?
The best way for me to answer that is to do it by analogy first, because it's a different sort of security technology. And I know that you and all your listeners are going, ugh, we've heard that before. It's focused on protection or prevention, if you will, as opposed to detection. When we talk about antivirus software, when we talk about EDR, your endpoint detection and response software, those are things using brand names like CrowdStrike and Cylance. Your antivirus is going to be things that people are familiar with in terms of McAfee or Trellix, or even on the home PCs, the Nortons. For work, for the business level, it's going to be a Sophos or a SentinelOne. All those products, they're important. They focus on detecting malware, detecting viruses, detecting ransomware, detecting bad actors trying to do things that they shouldn't be doing on your Windows device. But they're trying to detect it. The analogy I use is if you think of an office building, your PC as an office building, the security guard at the front desk who checks checks the badges of employees is kind of like your antivirus. Where I'm going to let all the employees in. I'm going to check their badges if I'm the security guard. If there's some visitor, I'm going to make sure that there is an employee who's going to sponsor them and bring them in. But mostly I'm just going to register them and let them enter. If I've got someone that I've been told ahead of time should not be allowed into the building, let's say it's a disgruntled ex-employee, I'm going to know about it ahead of time before they show up, and then I will keep them out. But I have to know ahead of time. I need to be told. In the same way, antivirus software, it needs to be updated, which is why you see those business rules, and periodically your antivirus is automatically updating to try to keep up with the latest versions of all the malware that's out there, so it can detect it. It uses something called a hash, which is really a mathematical signature of the file itself. And every file is going to have its own unique hash. And that's how those security guards at the front desk, the same way they'd be checking a badge or checking someone's name or what they look like, they're going to be checking the hash of these files before they let them in and keep the bad ones out. But it has to be known bad. Now, we do have next generation antivirus, which is behavior-based. And I like to say that's kind of like telling the security guards, don't let anyone who is obviously drunk or high into the building. I think we all believe that if we had to, if we were challenged to get past a handful of different security guards at various front desks and buildings, we could probably sneak past one of them pretty easily. And again, the bad actors only need one win. You talked about that in the beginning. A tie is a win. And there's lots and lots of ways to lose. We could all sneak past some security guard carrying a pizza or wearing an air conditioner repair person's uniform and follow other people in. We are persistent enough. So antivirus, it's great. It's an important layer. It's usually the first layer of defense that folks are using. And then after that, we see that organizations have said, hey, that isn't good enough. So they might add security cameras inside their office building. And that's kind of like your EDR, your endpoint detection and response software. And you're trying to catch the bad guys already in the act. Those bad actors who might already be on your PC infected or across all of your fleet of PCs. You're looking for evidence that someone is stealing data or someone is walking out the back door of your office building with something they shouldn't. But the assumption is they're already there. Wolf Pro Security, and I was kind of building up to this in an analogy. The Wolf Pro Security, it's a different sort of software. It's not the security guard at the front desk trying to detect. It's not the security cameras inside the building trying to detect. It's kind of like one of those glassed-in conference rooms that's outside security. Rick, you ever gone to a building and you're not actually allowed in? You have to sit in one of those conference rooms where the employees will come out to you to meet?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The fishbowl.
There's nothing in there. I mean, if you were there for some sort of nefarious intent, would there be any company secrets for you to steal?
Oh, no, absolutely not. It's glass walls. Like you said, you're really just sitting in there waiting to be retrieved.
Exactly. Whereas if you were inside the building, if that same meeting was taken inside the building, when you went to the restroom, you could be passing by any number of unlocked PCs or shoulder surfing for employees, or even just grabbing paper files. So, but if you're outside in that conference room, there's nothing to steal. Wolf Pro Security does that same sort of thing on your Windows PC. It will, for the types of attacks that the vast majority of attackers start with, we're going to actually protect them we're going to isolate them in this equivalent of a glassed-in conference room outside.
And so is that done through, how exactly does that work? Is it done through, and I've used it obviously where, I'll get an email and I will open that email and then it opens a separate browser where it's not my normal web browser.
Exactly.
And is that running it sort of like a virtual machine at that point?
It is, exactly. We call it a micro virtual machine. I don't like to dive into a lot of the technology because we can get distracted on that. The point is it's a micro virtual machine on your PC and not in the cloud. So you don't have the latency of the cloud. We use the word micro because it's a super small, super fast, super secure virtual machine. A lot of the more technical folks who are listening may be thinking, it's a virtual machine. Whenever I've run a virtual machine on my local PC, it's a full copy of another operating system and it's going to bog it down because now you're running two operating systems on the same PC. In this case, we're doing something called copy on write technology. The super techie folks are going to be nodding. Everyone else, it doesn't really matter. Just focus on that super fast, super small, super secure aspect of these micro virtual machines. So in the same way that we had that conference room just outside security, but still in the building, physically in the building, we've got this micro virtual machine that's outside of your regular Windows environment, but is physically on your device. So you're using the resources, the computing resources that you already own, and you're not paying for cloud resources to do some sort of remote browsing.
And that's fantastic. And so I imagine that handles different types of threats. Like, one of the things one of the terms you always hear is 0 day, a 0 day threat. Is that where this micro virtual machine comes in and can help, alleviate that headache? Because, that's really what people are looking for these days. They're looking for, like you said, it's not about detecting, because it's great to detect, but just because you've detected it doesn't mean that you've stopped it.
I'll say that detecting it is often the step to then stopping it, but you have to know what you're looking for. And the 0 day, the scary part of 0 day is that you don't know that you need to detect it. How do you know what your detection rules are if you've never seen it before? And that's the scary part of 0 days. And I hate to use the word scary because I know that whenever folks try to sell security, we always use fear, uncertainty, and doubt and try to scare people into buying security software because, oh no, this is the worst thing in the world and you're totally going to get hacked. These other tools I've talked about, they're great. They are important. But at the end of the day, 0 days means that they are types of attacks that have not been seen before. And if they haven't been seen before, then the existing tools don't know to detect them. Now, eventually, there's enough customers, there's enough organizations, enough victims who get hit by this new 0 day that people realize that these PCs have been compromised or these networks have been compromised. And then the security teams from these vendors go in and try to find out what has happened and then build detection rules to stop it. So when we talk about 0 days, this is really things that haven't been seen before. So if you haven't ever seen it before, how do these tools detect it? Well, the answer is each of those companies generally have to have one or more victims before they can build those detection-based rules and then send them out to their organizations. I have one of the largest customers that HP has for our Wolf Pro security software. I actually support them, so I have both a evangelizing role here at HP in terms of talking about Wolf Pro security, but I also support several real customers. And one of our largest customers, when they were first trying out this software, they had their CISO, their Chief Information Security Officer, was interested in this enough and really wanted to understand how it worked on his endpoint. So his team was running it in their environment and a bunch of lab PCs, and then they put it on their PCs as well. And then the CISO said, "I want to run it on mine." Now the CISO received an email, and thankfully he was not too distracted, because we all know that if we're on one or two different phone calls and we're trying to get through our email, we'll probably click on things we shouldn't. And even CISOs do that, where they click things they shouldn't. So, anyone can get compromised. Well, he happened to be paying attention. So he saw it and he said, this looks a little bit odd. It has my name on it in the email. It looks well written, but something looks, odd. So he forwarded that email off to the team and said, "Hey, run this on those lab machines." And they ran it on the lab machines, and they were all excited that the Wolf Pro security technology worked for them. It isolated the malware. They were pretty impressed. The malware actually had inside it the name of the CISO, so it was clearly targeted and written just for that CISO to attack them. And this is a pretty large company, Fortune 100 company that had been targeted. So it's not surprising that the CISO is also being personally targeted. They were so excited they wanted to show me the next day on our regular status call how the Wolf Pro security technology had actually stopped it. And they wanted to forward that email from those lab devices to their work PCs so they could show how it worked. They couldn't forward it, but the CISO forwarded it when he was able to forward it over to lab devices, but they couldn't forward it from the lab devices over to the work PCs because their antivirus software was stopping it from being forwarded from the lab devices to their work PCs. So why didn't the CISO get stopped? It was because the antivirus software had not been updated yet. They went back and did a forensic analysis of actually what happened with this potential attack. There was a 13-hour gap between when the CISO received this targeted email and when the antivirus software received the updated definition files to actually detect that type of attack. That 13-hour window, that was when they were attacking. The CISO just happened to be running the Wolf Pro security software. Now, he also happened to be aware enough to not click on it. But if he hadn't been, that would have been that malware would have run undetected on his device for at least 13 hours, and we don't know what else it would have done or how far it would have gotten. We run this software inside HP as well. In fact, DALY runs it as well on your devices. So it's always great to see, folks, and partners when they're using that same software that they're selling. But HP uses it, and I've got access to to see the internal controller for that. Anywhere from 5 to 15% of the true positive threats that the Wolf Pro security technology stops and isolates for internal HP users, 5 to 15% is undetectable by hash at the time that we're isolating it. So 5 to 15% every month is hitting that same sort of, the equivalent of that 13-hour window. And I don't know how long it takes those different tools to finally get caught up. But those are the ones that are not yet updated at time of clicking.
Wow, and that's fascinating. All of this is running. I mean, is this something that, and again, speaking for the folks out there who are listening, who are wearing many hats, because you have a lot of system admins who they're also something else because, budgets are stretched thin these days and everybody's wearing multiple hats. So, I mean, is the HP Wolf Pro something that is difficult to install, is there something that they have to do to manage it? They're constantly having to go on and log into a portal and do all kinds of updates or pull different things down. I mean, how does that work on the system admin side of things?
I'm going to answer that in two ways, because I'm really hearing two questions here, which is one from the installation perspective, and that's important for the IT folks and anyone who has also wearing the hat for security operations, where the initial deployment. And you've got two options. There is the installation via your typical install tools. And it's a simple MSI file, an installation file. And we just need a few command line switches. For those technical folks, this is going to be, easy peasy stuff. And for the longer term sort of maintenance, we see that most organizations spend a little bit of time tuning it up front, just understanding what sort of, how this is working with the other tools. And just like you would always have that security guard and potentially security cameras, as well as that glassed-in conference room, you wouldn't get rid of the other two just if you had those outside conference rooms. You're going to add a Wolf Pro Security to your existing suite. So you're going to manage that. And one of the things that we find in terms of managing it is that it actually reduces the number of false alarms, and it reduces a bit on the alert fatigue that we see on the security side for trying to respond to all the different threats that are coming in. Because if you found out that someone had come into your office building and potentially had stolen something, one of those visitors had grabbed something off a desk and run out the back door, you might have to do a full lockdown and figure out what else was stolen. Did they, have they been in there before? But if you knew that person had only been in that glassed-in conference room and they stole a few of the extra pamphlets or some, the tchotchkes, or let's say a picture off the wall, something that's relatively meaningless in terms of your company's organization, there's not a lot you have to do to remediate that sort of attack. So in the same way, we hear from our customers that it's actually saving overall time, because the response or the remediation to any real attack that never actually compromised anything is a lot more reduced. You don't have as much labor spent responding to all these attacks, so you can spend more time maybe investigating the other attacks that are coming in through other vectors.
I know that this is something that comes through my Outlook with my work email. Every time I click a link, it goes immediately to that, to the HP Wolf Pro. We called it the micro virtualized machine.
Mm-hmm.
Now I know there are a lot of people that I'm someone who doesn't mix personal and business. If I'm going to check my personal email, I'm going to usually do it on my phone or something like that. But I know that there are a lot of people that don't have that luxury. You go and you work in an office building where there is no cell phone reception, but you want to make sure you're not completely cut off from the outside world.
Rick, you're asking about webmail in general. And a lot of organizations are focused on their organization's email. Usually we talk about Outlook. Sometimes there's other tools that are used for the corporate mail. And there's a fair amount of detection-based technology that's built into that, to those email systems, either at the endpoint or on the email server. However, the vast majority of organizations also allow their end users to access their personal webmail. You've just talked about it. The bad actors, they know that as well. And if they're targeting someone, or they're not, and they're just kind of doing they're spraying malware, they're going to try to find out what your personal webmail is. and then send it to you during work hours with the hope that you're going to open it on your work PC. Or, you're going to open it on your work PC, and they weren't specifically targeting you, but now they've got a juicier target. So it's not a home PC. It's now this work PC with all the attendant networks that are available for it to start to move laterally. The HP Wolf Pro Security works on Outlook, but also Gmail, Yahoo, those other tools right out of the box. And there's plenty of other webmail that can be added and configured to it. And we're going to have that same sort of protection, that prevention that we would do with isolation for links and downloads from those same web-based technology. Some of the attacks that we see inside HP, and we do run this software within HP, we see that end users have added non-HP email accounts to their Outlook client. That's another way that attackers can come in, that other mail, and now it's on that work PC because the folks are accessing it there. Most of those detection-based tools are not going to work, and they're not going to look at those personal webmail services or those other personal emails. So yes, we protect those as well.
So tell us more about the threat vectors that HP Wolf Pro is focused on.
I'd like to answer this by starting with an understanding and kind of talking about cybersecurity awareness training. We talked about detection, and we've talked about stopping threats. One of the things we haven't, and we've talked about these other tools that attempt to detect and stop these threats. We haven't talked about the other type of technology that's out there that companies are trying to leverage today, which is the human detector. Cybersecurity awareness training. Rick, do you have a requirement to take some sort of training on an annual basis, or have you had that in the past in other roles?
Yes, I have.
Right. And most organizations, when I talk to them and I say, hey, if you got this, how often or, how many times in a row does your organization pass 100% of the time with all your employees? And the answer is never. But here's the question, and it's a rhetorical question, really, which is, if we've got these other great security tools, the software detection-based tools, why are we asking end users to be human detectors of malware as well? And my answer is, it's a tacit acknowledgement that the detection-based software is not good enough. We talk about, so the things that we are asking our end users to not click are things like attachments we're not expecting, links in emails that we don't know where that link is going to, usually from emails we're not expecting. Don't download files from the internet. You don't know where they've come from. Perfectly good software out there that gets a little bit extra added to it when folks will download it from unknown sites. So if you don't get it from your internal IT folks and you're downloading it from some site saying, hey, I want a free version of X, the bad actors know that you're going to be looking for the free version of that, and they'll give you that free version and a little bit more. And usually that little bit more is not a very good thing for your PC and or your company. We also tell our end users not to plug USB drives, unknown USB drives, into the PCs. There have been many known attacks over the years getting into three-letter federal agencies and plenty of other companies where they just drop a bunch of USB drives into the parking lot, the employee parking lot, and hope that some employee comes in and plugs it in. And then finally, we're told, don't enter your password into unknown websites. All those are ways that cybersecurity awareness training tries to turn us employees into human security detectors. And again, we talked about it doesn't really work 100% of the time. And it's acknowledgement that the security software isn't working 100% of the time either. HP's Wolf Pro security technology is focused on those 5 use cases that I just talked about. The links in emails, the attachments in emails, and really messages in general, the file downloads from websites that aren't specifically trusted, USB drives, the files that come in on USB drives, as well as passwords that are entered into random websites. All those areas, those are the 5 key areas that HP Wolf Security is trying to protect against, that go above and beyond just trying to detect malware, but are actually protecting it. So all those scenarios are areas we're going to be using that same sort of idea of the conference room, that glassed-in conference room. So it's never really on your PC. And we've got ways to protect that either through the using microvirtualization for documents. So Word, Excel, PowerPoint, PDF documents, which are the most common attack vectors. We also have protection for executables. That could be your EXEs and your MSI files, but also a lot of the executable script files that are out there, the PowerShell and et cetera. And then USB drives, and we also protect the three main browsers, as well as we have our own secure browser, which runs in that isolation again, that micro virtual machine. So those are the sorts of use cases that we're protecting against. When we have customers who come to us, a lot of the times they have had some sort of breach, or they know someone who's had a breach, and they say, I had something similar to what everyone else had, and it wasn't good enough. Again, that admission that detection-based technology isn't good enough. We had that 13-hour gap for that CISO. This is where we're trying to close that gap.
Okay. No, and that's incredible, because even when you talk about the training, everybody's always telling you don't click on links, don't click on attachments. But I mean, there have been a couple of times that I've been tripped up in the past, and I know other people have done it too, because you're waiting on something. I was waiting on a contract document, and I knew it was coming over in a PDF. And the next thing I know, I get an email with a PDF attachment that mentions a contract document. You're waiting on that because you got to hurry up and got to get it signed, and you got to get it back to them because the clock is ticking, and human nature just takes over, and you don't read, you don't look at and see, who it came from. And the one I got tripped up with was for a DocuSign. I was waiting for a DocuSign, and then all of a sudden I get a spam or a malicious email that says, click here to access your DocuSign. And I just clicked it. And the next thing I know, I ended up in remedial cybersecurity training because it was a test that the company had sent out, and it burned me. But that's the thing. People are going to get burned. I mean, that's, I think, what most people, what most organizations don't realize is that, human error is one of the major causes of cybersecurity incidents. And so you're not going to change human nature. Human nature is we're going to do things sometimes. I mean, I even had one where I was trying to grab my mouse to click, close the email or click delete or whatever I was trying to click. And I, just happened to be that my cursor was right where the link was and click the link. So these things will happen. So to have something that will protect against that, like you said, it's not just about detection, because detection, if like you and analogized before, if the person puts on the pizza delivery uniform or the air conditioning repair uniform, there's no way to detect that, but you can protect against it by making sure that you're keeping them in that nice, safe, sealed environment.
Yes. Now, usually at this point in the conversation, folks will say, well, how do you know when to isolate? And the answer is twofold. One, we don't, because we're not trying to detect whether something is malicious ahead of time. We don't know if that pizza delivery person is, just delivering a pizza or trying to deliver and or steal a little bit more. So either way, we're gonna meet them in that glassed-in conference room. We're gonna meet them outside security and do the handoff there. In the same way, I don't know if you're in accounts payable, you're going to be receiving invoices all day long. Do you know which vendors ahead of time you're going to be receiving invoices from? Absolutely not. So you've got to open all of those. That's your job. And the idea that we expect employees to somehow know which attachments or which links are unexpected and unsafe is kind of ludicrous, because it's not possible for us to do our jobs efficiently. For organizations that take an adversarial approach to when folks fail the internal phishing tests that you just talked about, and that starts to turn into punishment. We've even heard of organizations that where it gets marked down on your HR file that you keep, that you've clicked one or more times on these phishing tests. The response from, the totally valid, logical response for that employee and many other employees will be, fine, then every email, I'm going to forward it to my, the phishing, the IT help section or the security team to say, hey, is this link bad? Is this file bad? And you just flood them with it because they don't want all of that responsibility. And frankly, as an organization, we don't expect them and shouldn't expect them to have all the responsibility. That's where the IT team or the cybersecurity team has to step up and say, yes, we're going to do our best job at this. And HP Wolf Pro Security is another way to help protect those endpoints. We have many end users, especially the folks who are early in the adoption of the Wolf Pro Security product. Those folks who are doing those early evaluations. They talk about whenever they've moved to a new company or they're using a new PC and they're not sure if it's got the Wolf Pro Security on it. They feel kind of unsafe on the internet now. Like they really like that extra layer of protection, knowing that when they're clicking something based on the security policy for that organization, it's going to jump in and it's going to actually isolate the right things. So they have that extra security blanket versus the potentially adversarial nature of failing a phishing test. Inside HP, we do those same sort of phishing tests as well. We don't treat it in an adversarial way. But the interesting thing is that with the Wolf Pro Security, that phishing test or most other technology or most other attacks, I can't claim that it's 100%. But I don't worry about it. Now, I can tell you that HP Legal allows us to say that we have opened between all of our customers, our internal usage, our internal testing, as well as multiple contests that we have run that we used to call Bring Your Own Malware. We'd actually invite cybersecurity researchers to bring malware and try to break out of these micro virtual machines. HP Legal lets us say that we have opened over 35 billion of these micro virtual machines, and we have 0 reported escapes. So is that a guarantee for future performance? No. But our track record is, the way that we measure it versus the way that detection-based technology measures it, that detection-based technology, they talk about mean time to detection, the average time from when malware appears in the wild to when they detect it. And then, of course, once they've detected it, they have to get those detection rules out to all of those endpoints that will actually detect it on that endpoint. So how much of that 13 hours was waiting for the update versus how much of that 13 hours for that CISO was that their vendors seeing it for the first time, trying to reverse engineer it and write those detection rules so that they could get it. That's the mean time to detection right there. And we talk about 0 reported escapes. Rick,
and that is amazing because I imagine that, having that measurement, because like you said, how do you measure things if somebody isn't compromised? Well, you have this empirical data that you can then share with folks. Fantastic. And then one final question for you. Is this technology limited to just HP PC devices?
No, Rick, it's available in 2 different flavors. One is available only on HP PCs bundled in, so it's really just a way to buy it when you bought the. But because I talked about that cybersecurity startup, when HP purchased Bromium, one of the agreements was that we could continue to sell the software to non-HP devices. HP recognized that this is technology that's important enough. This is standalone software, security software that's important enough that we can't gatekeep to just a single platform. So yes, it'll run on other brands' Windows devices, and you can deploy this across the fleet. Many organizations have a mixed brand fleet. We recognize that. And it all works the same in terms of the same protection profile. There is no inherent advantage for or any handicapping for non-HP devices. There are other features that HP has that are built into the devices. I mentioned early on something called Sure Start, which is really our self-healing BIOS. I think you guys are planning some other session to talk about that in the future with some of those experts. But yeah, Sure Start, that's available for HP devices only. It's a self-healing BIOS. But for the HP Wolf Pro Security, yes, we've got that either bundled into the HP devices, or you can purchase it at like any other security software, license-based, that can be deployed to non-HP and HP devices.
Fantastic, because we as much we always do love our collaboration with HP, but we also recognize that a lot of times we get customers who come to us after the fact, and again, they have those Windows PCs from a different manufacturer, and so being able to offer them this solution without them having to change their hardware, because it might not be their refresh cycle yet, but they're listening to this and recognizing there's a lot more that they could be doing along with the other solutions that they have. There's a lot more they could be doing to protect and not just detect. That's that's really something that I think will be comforting to them. James, any final thoughts on HP Wolf Security as we wrap up this episode?
Yeah, I'd just like to mention, I think I hinted at this a bit, but there is a controller behind this. We've talked about what it looks like a bit and how the protection works from an endpoint, but this is not just an endpoint software. This is for organizations. This is for organizations who have security departments, and they want to be able to manage all of their deployments themselves. So we've got a web-based controller where you're actually going to create the policies that will push this down. It will self-update and manage it. And we've got an option for the organizations that don't have a separate security department, and maybe it's just IT who also has security responsibilities. And we've got a slightly more slimmed down interface, same protection level, but just fewer management options, because usually those organizations have slightly simpler deployments and fleets and just sort of IT environment. And those also can allow a partner like DALY to manage that HP Wolf security environment for them. And there's a lot of options in there, whether you've got DALY or someone else that you want to manage for that environment. The Wolf Pro Security will work, or the standalone, the company, the organization runs it themselves. Both those options are available with that cloud controller. And this is all licensed on a per device basis. That cloud controller, you get it for free with 25 or more licenses. So we're not charging anything more for it. It's really just once you get large enough to need that controller, we're there for you. And that controller will address the needs in terms of managing and responding to the threats, and maybe even feeding those threats into your other reporting systems.
Excellent. Thank you so much for explaining that. And James, again, we want to remind everybody that if they want to have more conversations about this, they want to see all of the benefits of HP Wolf Security, that we're more than happy to facilitate that conversation and bring you in and bring your colleagues in and make sure that everybody understands just how this works and how it can benefit their organization. All they need to do is reach out to DALY, and we'll be happy to do that. James, thank you so much. I really do appreciate all the information you shared today. This has been fantastic. And you talked before about we don't want to scare people, and that's really not what we're looking to do. We're not looking to induce panic, but it is, again, a topic that needs to stay top of mind for every organization. There's no organization that doesn't need to take their security seriously. And we're certainly thankful that we have such a tremendous partner in HP Inc. and how you can bring in the HP Wolf security suite or platform to our customers. So thank you again for joining us on the Technology Pulse.
Thanks for the opportunity, Rick. I really appreciate it.
And that wraps up another insightful episode of the Daily Technology Pulse podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Before we sign off, we want to take a moment to remind you of some important legal considerations. The views and opinions expressed by guests on the Daily Technology Pulse podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of Daily Computers or its partners. The content provided in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of Daily Computers Inc. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please feel free to reach out to us. You can find us at www.daly.com. The Daily Technology Pulse podcast will be back with more exciting discussions on the latest in technology. Until next time, stay curious and stay connected.